Wow. Hello, everybody in Yiddishland and everywhere on the outside of Yiddishland. Is there an outside of Yiddishland? Who knows? We'll find out tonight. I'm Alan, and it's a real pleasure for me to be host on behalf of Yiddish Summer Weimar 2020 of the public listening to the second Forspiel album. And first, I'd like to just bring in the founders of the band, starting with Ilya Shneyveys, who's in Brooklyn at the moment, I believe. Yeah. And Sasha Lurje, who is in Weimar at the moment, I believe. Hey. Hello, people. So, actually, the original plan was to present this album, I think on August 7th, right? In Weimar Live with the whole band. And because of Corona, that didn't work out. So this is the first time that we've ever done anything like this after Yiddish Summer, doing a presentation, and I can't think of a better occasion, both for the music and also for the people involved. So Sasha and Ilya, I'm gonna let you take it away at the moment.
Und der ganze Prisutztwe sollst die nicht gefällt. Just die mir so ins abgetein Heida heier leben mein Was ich denke so wo je noch dir noch dir Ich hab dir gar nicht abgetein ja heier leben meins Hop sich pushet eingeliebt in dir, oh jede dir Ich hab dir gar nicht abgetein, oh ja, teier leben meins Ich hab sich pushet eingeliebt in jede dir tenho da halje mi tenho da halje mi da Reus von Kaiser sind. Immer sollten schon kennen, vor nach Hasene Schmied.
So,
Hi,
while I was
Alan.
listening, hello, that was a trip. When I was listening to that, I was thinking, I think in the early days of Brave Old World, somebody asked me, what did I think the klezmer revival was about? And I said it was about rediscovering ecstatic participation. And I think that over the 40 years or something since that began, that there have been waves of different understandings of what ecstasy is and how we express that in our music. And I know this is not what we're supposed to do right now, but let me just throw keywords at you. So ecstasy and trance.
Nice words.
Any thoughts about that vis-a-vis your music?
You talking about the drugs, ecstasy, or?
Well, I was talking about ecstasy in general, but actually you reminded me of the son of somebody I've known for a long time who's in our community recently posted on, I think on Facebook, that he's looking for a new group house, and he put on this ad the different things that he was interested in his housemates, and he said interested in psychedelics. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I mean, I know that you cite things like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and so forth, and that music definitely was connected to ecstasy, trance, psychedelics, transcendence. Of course, all of those things have something to do with religion too, traditionally. So do you have any thoughts about all of this?
Well, to me, it's an interesting combination of things because those things are definitely very present in Ashkenazi Jewish musical world. You don't have to play a distorted electric bass to be in.
What do you mean?
I mean, you don't have to do it. You can do it, but you don't have to be in an Ashkenazi musical world and experience ecstasy or trance. Like there's a lot of practices in which that's very typical. And this is a repertoire that doesn't necessarily do it. Everything we do is based on very intimate repertoire, like the all of these lyrical Yiddish songs are normally performed solo, unaccompanied, and they're intricate and intimate. And it's an interesting, how should I put it? It's an interesting question how to bring these things together,
Well, I guess maybe there's such a thing as an introverted ecstasy and an extroverted ecstasy. And maybe the interesting thing is when we hear these unaccompanied songs that we dive into a kind of introverted ecstasy. And then as performers on festival stages, the challenge is to, make that accessible to audiences to go on this trip with us. Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense to me. I think it's the amazing thing about music, as some other activities. It's like you don't need drugs to have fun, and you don't need drugs necessarily to go, to get into trance or ecstasy. I mean, music is the drug. Drugs help you sort of understand, like let go of some things, but it's interesting. I read an interview with Ray Manzarek, the Doors, the keyboard player for the Doors, where he said something like, you don't have to keep taking drugs. Like you have to take them once or twice or something, or enough times to understand, open the doors of your perception, and then you can just, and then the doors are open, right? And then you just, like, you see all the possibilities, and I feel like music definitely helps me do that. Helps me get into trance, and like the best things happen when I stop thinking about music. Like when I'm playing music and I stop thinking about music, and I start thinking of other things, and sometimes they're not related to music, but then
I'm thinking now about this great film, A Serious Man, that came out.
Right.
And where you see sort of the first generation, which still has these sort of old, possibly impossible to really understand mystical allegories and stories. And then the second generation, which becomes sort of conservative Judaism. And then the third generation, which was my generation too, which sort of rebelled against that by listening to, the music of San Francisco of that period of time and so forth. And, you played, I was surprised that you played at the very beginning something that included a melodica solo that I took, which was directly inspired by Leon Thomas in the Pharoah Sanders album, The Creator Has a Master Plan. And there was a whole wave of things coming out, in the 60s and the early 70s, A Love Supreme, Creator Has a Master Plan, Miles in the Sky, various things that were all about transcendence and trance and ecstasy. And my favorite example of this is Mingus's Black Saint and a Sinner Lady. All those things were motivating the early days of the klezmer revival, and for me all the way through. And I'm just really happy to hear like the latest version of being energized by those subjects in your music. I really love it. So before we go any further into this, Sasha, you're spinning around for some reason. We don't see you anymore. I don't know what happened.
I'm very spinny.
You're spinning. Okay, we spun out into
yeah. This is
the ecstatic.
This is how I get my exercise.
Oh, so let's make sure that everybody knows who you guys are. You're the founders of a band called Forshpil, and tell us what Forshpil means and how this band came into existence and what's been feeding you and what's going on.
Ilya, go.
All right. So we are Forspiel, or we are the founding members and the most active members. I mean, whatever active means these days, because we're not playing any. I have not been playing any gigs lately with this band, except this.
With this band, yes.
Right, but just generally.
Except this is almost a gig.
Oh, exactly. Well,
and
yeah.
There are actual people. Hello, everybody.
Are there
That's
actually?
There's people that joined us. So hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Actually, really.
I can't see them, but say hello to all of them for me, please.
Right. Well,
they
yeah.
can
By the way,
see you. If you just say it, they can hear and
if
see
you. If you're
this
watching
is how live
on,
stream works.
if you're watching on either on Facebook or on YouTube or on both, if you're really into that, and if you want to leave a comment, we might answer it, or not a comment. You can a question or a comment. Say something nice or silly, or say how much you like or don't like this music. I'll be happy to discuss that. So we're Forshpil, and Forshpil is a klezmer term. Actually, it's a term that we took from klezmer music, and it means a prelude, as in like a musical prelude, like an introduction to something, where you usually play some version of a melody before you actually play the melody. This is what I did in the beginning, and I'm not sure if there's a deeper meaning behind that, but in a way, yeah, we're always preparing for something, maybe. But we started playing more than 15 years ago, 17 years ago. What was that? Something like that. 18 years ago, yeah. Maybe, yeah, 2003, yeah. Anyway.
No, that's 17. I can't count.
That's okay. And when we started, we actually it sounded a bit different, and we didn't really know what we're doing. In a different way that we don't know what we're doing now. So we were really just learning about Yiddish folk music, and we discovered klezmer music and Yiddish songs, and we started going to many festivals where we met many amazing people, including Alan Bern. I think we first met in 2006, but I can't remember anymore.
That is true. That
is
I
true.
remember.
Right. So, and as we were learning Yiddish music, we were trying to kind of recycle the music in our heads and in our instruments, and try to, I don't know, look at it from the other side, whatever you may call it. But basically, this is why this incarnation of Forshpil is what we call Yiddish psychedelic rock, although I don't know how psychedelic it is, or how... It's definitely Yiddish.
And somewhat rock, for sure.
And somewhat rock, yeah. This is sort of an attempt... I was curious to hear what would... Alan, you were saying how you were growing up and you were listening to all kinds of, like... just like trance music, like transcendent music, ecstatic, and most of this music, it was inspired by a lot of folk traditions, like I would imagine Indian music, for example. But I was always wondering, what would it sound like if it was inspired by, Yiddish culture and Yiddish music. Because one of the cool things is that Yiddish culture is sort of, it's very Western and very Eastern, if that makes sense. Like, it has a lot of connections to Oriental music, as much as it has connections to Western music. So there's a lot of, so yeah, this is an attempt to recreate that music that never existed, and
or maybe it did exist, but it existed in a different context with different sounds, with different feelings. We'll see. We have time to figure that out. I think it would be a good idea. Sasha, do you want to make a direct comment on this right now, or should we jump into some more music? Because I know that people want to hear the music on the album.
We can go either way. I'm happy to play more. At one point, I would like us to also go through some questions before they go further in the chat. But maybe it doesn't have to.
Let's
listen to another something.
Also, by the way, I would like to mention that if people really want to listen to the music from the album, it's available for you to purchase and listen to the music at home, possibly in better quality than a internet stream. But
and I would like to say that I purposefully have not listened to it until right now, because I wanted my first impressions of it to be the ones that I shared with you. And we talked about that a couple of days ago, whether you were cool with that, and you both said, yeah, but make sure you mention that. So here I am mentioning that. And so tell us something about what the next piece is that we're going to hear.
Well, before we do, there is a little line running in the bottom of your screen, and that is exactly where you can catch the music right now. Right now, it's exclusively available on Bandcamp. If you want to support us, please do that. I see that on Facebook, Sarah Meyerson just put that link in the chat. And maybe we will manage. Thank you, Sarah. Maybe we'll manage to do that also on YouTube, and I think it's also in the description. So yeah, if you would like to catch the full album, that's where it's available. Go on, Ilya. Would you like to introduce the next song?
Right. Well, so it's worth mentioning that this band started in our band started in 2003 in Riga, Latvia, where Sasha and I are both from, and so this next song is a traditional Yiddish song, but it features a bit of Latvian language. I think, can you tell the story of what happened?
Yeah.
Why is it's in there?
I think we had a big concert in one of our favorite venues in Riga that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to mute you if you cough, Alan. I'm going to mute you.
It's not contagious.
I'm
it's not
trying to
contagious
show
over
everybody.
over the internet.
Trying to show everybody how I've learned how to cough into my elbow.
That's very good cough etiquette.
Thank you.
But yeah, so we were playing in a show in Riga, and right the day before we had this show, and we were already trying out some of the new material back then. That must have been a while ago.
That was the release of our first album, where we were already playing music from the second album.
That's true. So that must have been about 7-8 years ago. And we and one of the most important and fantastic Latvian poets, Imants Ziedonis, passed away the day before our show, and I really wanted to pay respect in some way, and we just, in a experimental way, I pulled up this poem that I really, really love. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous, sensual poem, and we just improvised and put it together with this song, and it worked so nicely that we felt like we had to keep it, and we wound up recording it that way. And when the booklet comes out, which is still on the way, but very soon, hopefully, there is going to be all the translations, including a wonderful English translation from our friend Martina Baltkalne that translated this poem into English so that everybody can actually follow this song in 2 languages that not a big number of people on earth speak. I think actually there are more people that speak Yiddish right now than technically in numbers around the world than people that speak Latvian.
And definitely not a lot of people that speak both. And this is possibly the only song that features Latvian and Yiddish. We'll see. One of the few. Okay.
Right.
So did somebody want to tell us what this is about? Briefly, like summary before we hear it, or rather not?
Love. Arn's old songs about love.
Okay. Ready to hear it, if you are.
All right, let's find it.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us what you think it's about. Not just you, but the audience.
1 second, I just lost it. Here, I found it. There you go. Oh, sorry.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
taču būs jāiet vēl kājām, un varbūt bez ūdens, bez saules un bez mājām. Bez ceļa, bez ūdens, bez saules un bez mājām. Man liekas, mēs tūkstošiem jūdžu jau gājām. Tas skatiens bija traks, un tas skatiens bija prātīgs. Tavs augums, ka rudzu maize bija sāpīgs. Tavs augums, ka rudzu maize bija sāpīgs. Tā zeme, ko viņ tavas kājas man patiks. Bet sviedriem un asinim saindētā. Tā zeme, ko viņ tavas kājas būs svētā. Šī zeme, ko viņ tavas kājas būs svētā. Balti ķirši un sarkanas rozes iet sētā. Kā laiku un telpu un bezgalību. Es tevi gribu.
Back. Wow.
Wow.
I guess I'm going to, my first remark after every track is probably going to be wow. So, yeah.
Hopefully.
So, the second album.
Can I just
Go ahead.
Yeah. Can I just say something that it's the first time I'm listening to this album over live stream, and it sounds not radically different. It sounds like listening to a radio, kind of.
A lot of compression.
Like, some of the frequencies are not exactly there. So I recommend you listen to the album, with headphones and stuff. But I think you get the idea of what it sounds like.
So I'm thinking about the progression from the first album and its sound and concept to the second album and its sound and its concept. And, given my background, I'm reflecting on when the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were coming out with a new album every 6 months or every year, and each one moved very far away from the last one. And we expected that, and each new album was going to be a discovery for us. I can remember hearing Sgt. Pepper's and literally thinking that I had gotten the wrong album until I finally realized that this is where the Beatles had moved, and that model of moving, of progressing in some way, of changing, of following whatever your inner artistic evolution is with the times, was also a very strong model for Brave Old World. And we usually heard, whenever we would release an album, everyone would say, oh, why did you have to change? Because the last one was so great, and we don't like this one as much. And then about 6 months later, everyone would say, well, actually, this is the best album, and we knew it all along. So the fact that, you're pushing ahead in a certain way, and your listeners may be surprised by that, and you want to bring them along with you, and all of that, What's your take on all of that? Why did you go here after the first album?
Well, it's this is sort of a continuation of what we did in the first album. It's just I guess got a bit heavier. I mean, also we learned stuff along the way, like also about music production and arrangement and stuff. But I was just thinking, like the music. It's funny because the arrangements that I have in my head sometimes they're too complicated for me. Like I can't play all the things that I want to play. And we tried over the years. We tried different things, and I hear more jazz influences, for example, but I can't really play jazz, not yet. I'm learning, but and I was sort of like speaking just for myself. I was trying to do that, and I realized that I can push it this far, but I cannot do more than I can do. But I do like playing rock music, and that's sort of my folk music. That's what I grew up with, or it's what I started doing as a teenager. And actually, when I started playing klezmer, I was in a bunch of rock bands at the time, and I was thinking, oh, this is cool material. It would be nice to turn that into a punk rock. And it took me 10 years of just playing traditional klezmer to really come back to, now I'm ready to take that and add,
Go there
and play it on the guitar.
Okay.
I wasn't. So in a way, and once, and it kind of developed naturally. We were playing, and it was just getting more and more heavier. And then I thought, well, why not take it there? I feel like now looking back at it, I feel like it could be even more heavier. Maybe that would be the next.
Okay,
more
Sasha.
heavy, yeah.
Let me direct this at you. Has your approach to singing or performing or stage presence has that changed from the first to the second album?
Oh, definitely.
How?
Definitely.
How and why?
I think, well, first of all, everything that Ilya said also is a factor for me, definitely. Another thing is I pretty much dedicated my Yiddish song exploration in many ways to like let me formulate that. I'm slightly multitasking, trying to run this thing at the same time, so it's a little. But yeah, I dedicated my exploration to exploring Yiddish lyrical song and that whole style. So, in many ways, I find it's experiencing a huge wave that has of people getting more into it. It's not like there weren't people that were doing this kind of things, but with Ethel Rehm starting to teach, that started at Yiddish Summer Weimar, and many other developments, I really spent a lot of time exploring this, and I think that's a big difference, because I think what I do now is much more informed by this style. That said, we've been recording this album for now, 6 years, I think. So on this record, you can hear me in different stages of this development, which is an interesting thing for myself to hear. And I also grew up with rock music. I grew up listening to rock music, and I always like to joke that everything I do is a little bit like older than everything I'm interested is older than whatever I was doing before. No. That doesn't make sense. Everything I'm interested is older than me. And comes from before me, which is both in popular music, like in rock music, and in folk music. So
yeah. Okay, I want to throw out a question which both of you can just say that's not interesting, and don't answer it if it's not interesting. If it is, I'd like to know what it is. Well, no, it's really honest. I'm interested in asking it, but if it's not interesting to answer, you don't feel you have to, okay? So I think I wrote to you about a year ago or a couple of years ago, I was reading James Loeffler's book, The Most Musical of Nations, and trembling with excitement, literally. And I mean literally, not figuratively, literally, because he's talking about how the St. Petersburg school, when they're breaking off and starting to compose new music, even at the stage where they're arranging traditional Yiddish songs, that they're asking themselves questions about what guarantees the Jewishness of what it is that they're doing. Is it the melody? Is it the language? Is it the harmony? There was a big dispute, a big split among people who said, well, Yiddish isn't the guarantee of it at all, and Hebrew should have to be the guarantee, and liturgical music should have to be the guarantee. So are you interested in a guarantee of this? Do you care about this question at all? And if you do care about it, where do you come down on it?
Yes. Oh, that is a very interesting question, and in fact, I do care very much about that. I feel like I would like this music to be Jewish. I would like this music to be Yiddish specifically, and not. And I try to, find a way to express that through music. We were at a festival. I'm not gonna say which one. It was many years ago, where we played our set back in 9 years ago, something, and it was great, and they organized that. It was great, but next time you should play Jewish music. And I said, well, what is Jewish music? And said, well, it's not rock, it's something else. And I think that question is very interesting for me, because just generally, well, what makes music Jewish, and what can you do to music to stop it being Jewish? Like the composers in the St. Petersburg school, they were arranging traditional Yiddish folk songs in the style that they, in the style of classical music.
Of their time.
Right. And, you take away those arrangements, the songs are still there, right? And they were amazing arrangements. They were extremely careful with, you don't just take the song and change the melody and get rid of all the ornaments and say that this is classical music now. You can do that, and people do that, and it can be very nice. You take a melody or something as an inspiration, you change it completely. But what I'm interested in, and we're interested in this project, and just generally, is I like to take I like to find things that are similar and work from there. And what I mean is, there are similar elements in most kinds of music. There's some things, like, obviously klezmer is not. I find that, for example, klezmer music and blues have a bit of a, like, it's different musics, but you have a bit of like the phrasing in some ways. How, like, in blues you go da 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 da, and then in klezmer you go da 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 da, like, repeating repeating phrases, and so if I wanted to connect those somehow, I would take the things that are common, and I would work from that, and I would add things kind of in both directions. I would add more Jewishness, and I would add more bluesiness, and make that. Or, classical music, there's a lot of common, I would say, harmony and melody is, there's some commonalities, and then there are not. And at that point, when you reach the differences, you can play around with that. And I find that there's a lot of kind of rock energy in klezmer music. And there's a lot of, like, those Yiddish love ballads, they are not exactly rock ballads, but they're ballads, and they are, so that the idea is to not have, not just stick two things together, but, find where they connect and, work from there.
Sasha, do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah. I think there is just a general idea, and Ilya kind of nicely mentioned it, and I'm going to be probably not quite as nice. I, I, I want to say that we kind of very often put Jewish music, Yiddish music in a box, and we create a space for it that it can only exist in this box. And if there is no accordion, it's not Yiddish music, right? Like, look, Ilya has 3. We have Alan Bern interview us. This has to be something that has an accordion. No, you know what I mean, though, right? Like, I find that sad, to be honest, and I think that if we can put our little something into normalizing that Jewish music is just, or Yiddish especially, Yiddish music is culture and music, and it doesn't have to be a certain thing that everybody imagines it is, and it sits in a museum on a shelf and gathers dust. I deeply believe that's not what it's all about, and I honestly am not interested. I love learning about everything. I love going as deep as possible into tradition, and I think without understanding tradition and learning from it, we can't develop, we can't move on, we can't create new Yiddish music, because it won't be Yiddish if we don't base it on something, on some ground. But I also am absolutely uninterested in creating something that resembles something that doesn't exist anymore. I want it to be an expression of what we do and of what's happening outside today.
There's an interesting issue here about new and old and what a community understands of its own musical tradition. Judith Cohen wrote something here that reminded me of something that happened with Brave Old World in the 90s. Again, I won't mention the festival or the city, but it was a very Jewish festival in a city that had a big Jewish community, and Brave Old World played there, and this was in the days of klezmer music repertoire. Michael was singing songs like the Saposkilla and In Dreußen geht der Regen and so forth. And at the intermission, the head of the community came to us and said, if you don't play some Yiddish songs in the second half of your program, you'll never come back here again. And we said, well, what do you mean? What Yiddish songs? Is like Sunrise, Sunset. After having just heard In Dreußen geht der Regen. And in fact, it took 20 years before we ever played in that place again.
I'm gonna just quickly explain for those for those who don't know what Die Saposkilla and In Dreußen geht der Regen, those are really beautiful old traditional songs, and a unique opportunity to hear someone like Michael Alpert sing them in the early 90s, and then to come up and have Sunrise
literally
Sunset is a different part of Jewish culture, but that's a musical that is written originally in English, Fiddler on the Roof.
That's right.
It exists in Yiddish now. Can we just, because this is a time-sensitive issue in a way, we have some special guests that we didn't expect, or we did expect, but we didn't know if they would make it, and they have about 5 minutes. So
great,
I would like to talk to them, and those are, speaking of people who researched, went deep into the tradition while also being, rooted in the tradition while being fluent in contemporary, are the rest of the band members, which is Mitya Khramtsov and Roman Shinder and Jacka Lizin from St. Petersburg, who are right now in an intermission of their gig with Dobronaj. Mitya, hi.
Mitya has to.
What's going on?
Himself, yes.
No, we can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you, darling.
Yeah, but it looks great. It looks very expressive.
It looks really good, and it's great to see you. And we still can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear us. Yeah, he's talking to us, and he's unmuted. So it's something with your microphone or something like that.
Settings. Must be something with your
Must
settings.
be something with your settings.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
hello,
maybe.
Mita.
Yeah. Hello. My
Mita,
earphones
привет.
is broken, so now I
Oh.
can talk, but I can't really hear you.
It's one or the other. That's how it always works.
Yeah.
You either
It's
talk or
broken.
you
Yeah.
listen, right?
I'm sorry. We're in the middle of the concert in Moscow, in this club. Yeah, nice to be with you for this short moment. Yeah, and congratulations. And I have to be
Congratulations
part
to
of
you
this
too.
project. Sorry?
Congratulations to you too. You're part of this. Is there anything
Yeah, I
you
would
want to
really
say
like
about
to-
this project? Is there anything you want to say about this project or anything?
For me, it's like it's interesting project because it's like Yiddish rock music, and I play my electric fiddle with the effects, which is like I'm normally not doing. Okay, I'm doing a little bit sometimes with my duo with my wife, but like twice a year or something. And it's really challenging, interesting, and like in my project Dobra Noch, where like it's not pure traditional music, but it's acoustic and it's more like straight. We not really like we experimenting a little bit, but not that much as a Forshpil. So for me, it's a challenge and it's very interesting to like to find something new, something interesting, um, with effects, with like little things I can do, like arrangements. For me, like the violin and rock music, for me, it's a big challenge. Normally, if I hear the violin in the rock band, normally it sounds bad. I mean, in the sense of arrangements, and nobody can hear it, and it's like, and I think like maybe like without violin, this band can sound better. So it's a really big change for me, a big challenge for me. But it's interesting, and it's like, and because it's a dear friends, and Sasha and Ilya and the rest of us, and it's always a pleasure, and hopefully we will play again soon.
yes, I hope
Hope
so.
so.
Yeah.
Hope so.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me, and
Thank
I
you for
probably
coming
have
by.
to leave.
Okay.
Have a fun show. Lovely.
Say
Thank
hi
you.
to everyone.
Lovely
Thank
seeing
you.
you.
Всем привет.
I'm gonna
Here, so luckily for Mita, with even though in his band Volny with his wife Germina, he only plays this music twice a year. In this band, he can play it only once a year, or as often as we play gigs. But I just wanted to say, especially, I'm glad that the Mita joined before this next song, because so I just wanted to say two things about this, and one is that this song is it's probably the most popular song on this album, the most popular song as in because they're all relatively unpopular. There's no fiddler repertoire, but as in Fiddler on the Roof, there is a fiddler, but and actually my favorite version of this song is the one by Brave Old World from Beyond the Pale, and I really like it. I feel like it's kind of perfect. I don't know. I've listened to it many times, and I don't know. It just has I don't feel like I can make a better traditional version of it, or not traditional, but better. So somehow I felt compelled to try all these weird other arrangements. We heard in
one today. We
in the
also
intro
have a version of it on the first album.
Right, was the intro music, so, but I wasn't happy with the arrangement, even though it has the amazing melodica solo. That's actually one of my favorite parts from the first album. But so we tried a different arrangement, which was much more heavy, and actually the first couple of minutes of this song, like the introduction, is probably one of my favorite pieces of music, actually, not because I arranged it, but just because how it came to be. This is kind of what I like about music, it's basically, you know, what Mitya said, like violin in rock music can be tricky, but what I like about this is that he's not playing rock music there. He's basically just playing a doina on a distorted electric violin over, you know, over a rock band, and it works. And I feel like this is something, you know, what I was saying about like Yiddish music and rock or blues being connected in this way. It's it's slightly different scales, but you have a similar expression. And so unless you want to say something else, I would just listen to this.
Yeah, let's just listen to this. Here we go.
Yes, and that was the new version of the Saposkilla by Forshpil, with karaoke dance by
Right.
Sasha. Very convincing, by the way, really good, amazing.
No,
Ilya,
I was singing along.
Are you?
I
Okay,
muted
okay.
myself, but I was.
All
I
right.
actually was.
Okay, so
I can't help it.
That's cool. Ilya, I have written down here a question to ask about the full album versus single approach. Beyond the Pale,
Yep.
/ Dark Side of the Moon. Would you like to say something about that?
Oh yes, the suggested questions.
Yes, that's a suggested question. I'm curious.
Well, it's more of a the music industry has obviously changed, as we all know, and it has changed. And one of the most dramatic changes from say back in the 60s and 70s is that people don't listen to albums as much. People listen to songs, and it has to do with many things: attention span, marketing. I don't know. I would like to know why, but I feel like I like albums. I feel like one song is great. It's a fractal. One song has to be a thing in itself, but then an album has to be also a thing in itself. At least, this is how my favorite albums are the ones that where like one song flows into another in some way, or like they're connected. It's not just a compilation. Even if it's a compilation, it's a mixtape. It also has to kind of have a flow. And I actually, those two albums, Brave Old Worlds, Beyond the Pale, I think is the reason I like it so much is because it is not just a collection of songs. Actually, they go into one another, even like there's a bigger story kind of that is being told, and also just on a level of harmony or something and rhythm, like it sometimes you go from one key to another key, and interesting, I read a while ago, I read somebody's analysis of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, where they're analyzing the whole album is basically a long 2-5-1 progression in different keys, but it goes from and you can hear that in different songs. It's all like a 2/5s that then resolve to the one in the next song or something like that, right? And I kind of like that idea, and I feel like I'm not thinking about harmonies when I'm listening to an album, but there's a sense of either a resolution or of a dissonance. And actually, most of the songs on this album, so like this last song had 5 modulations or something, but it starts in the key of E minor, which is the key of the song before that, which actually the key, so the song before, the first song of the album is an A Freygish. If you don't know what Freygish is, please come to one of these festivals and learn. But, and it ends on an open E string, kind of like it ends on the 5 of the chord, which goes into the next song, which is in E minor. And then this song starts in E minor, and then it goes through a bunch of keys into A minor. And this is when the next song starts. And this is not the most important thing, but it's kind of was one of the things that was, I used to like making set lists for things in the bands that I used to play in. And I would think about it, and that was the fun. It's like a puzzle, it put what song goes after which and why, like some energetic song, and then there's yeah, that is kind of, and this is something that I think one of the reasons why this album is not yet on Spotify and Apple Music, which I think it will be eventually, but it is a bit of that, like Bandcamp as a platform is something that recreates some of this album mentality, and you can buy a track, but you probably just want to buy an album, or I recommend it just for many albums, and especially for this one.
Since you mentioned Beyond the Pale, maybe I'll just say briefly that it was actually one of the most important conscious goals of Brave Old World from the beginning, to create concerts that had a dramaturgical sweep to them and a unity through all the different repertoire that we did, and also for the albums to be that way too. And I myself, in that context, I was inspired by classical music. I was also inspired by, I mentioned the Black Saint and Sinner Lady by Mingus, and I was inspired by the Beatles. And I remember, I just looked this up while we were talking, this song, The End. I never realized it was actually a song called The End. But this is apparently the last song, is the song on Abbey Road, and it's the last song they ever wrote collectively. And it says, the very last lyric says, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. And I remember the feeling that I had when I first heard that, and I've had even now remembering that, and that feeling of something just dropping, and that you've been dropped down into a realization that takes you an hour to get there, which is what happens in symphonies as well. I mean, that was something that was difficult to do in the beginning of the Yiddish music revival in the United States, because most of our audience didn't speak Yiddish, and so if we were doing songs, we would translate what we were doing before and what we did afterwards. And the amazing thing about playing in Germany was, by sticking to not Lashon Kodesh influenced Yiddish, we could do an entire set and the audience would understand 80 to 90% of what we were doing, and we could go into one of those deep kind of arcs and come out of it and actually get somewhere at the end. So I really appreciate that, what you're saying. And that also has to do, again, with what we started off with, talking about trance and ecstasy and,
Right, yeah.
a larger experience, and not just the experience of consuming 3 to 5 minutes something in between this and that, but of really going into something and letting it take you somewhere in transcendence, I think.
Right, yes, I agree. And I think the experience, the musical experience, the communal experience of experiencing music together, or some people call it musicking. Like using music as a verb, like, just playing music, you're musicking, and you're musicking together with the audience. And I think that's a great concept. And it's in concerts especially, I think it's you go to a concert, you want like for an experience of something, and sometimes it can be an improvised experience with no arc, but it still will have an arc if you're really conscious of the music. And something you said about the lyrics is also, I think, very interesting, and I see more and more people, like almost everyone in our community of Yiddish musicians, are using titles, super titles, subtitles, whatever, to communicate what the songs are about. Because otherwise, you're sitting there and trying to understand while also trying to listen to the music. This way, it's kind of a more integrated experience, which might bring us to this next song, which actually has subtitles.
Let me just ask Sasha a question before we go there. Sasha, how do you feel as a singer when you're singing a song and you see that the audience is reading subtitles or going back and forth between the subtitles and watching you? I mean, how does that affect your experience of performing and being a singer on stage?
I think it's very different depending on what music it is, what show it is, how it's set up. I have to be honest that for 90% of subtitled performances, or maybe 99% of subtitled performances, I mostly, like when it happens, I go like, oh man, it's incredible what happens if they don't think they understand most of it when they actually understand it. Like, people come with you on a completely different route. Because, I do all these things. I jump, especially with Forshpil, you might know, I jump around and I wave my hair in different directions, and I like pretty dresses. But really, I much rather people don't look at me and look at the subtitles and have their ears open. And if, I think, like, especially if they're reading in their mother tongue, at one point, you know how when you're in the movies, you kind of like start feeling like you're almost not reading because like it just starts happening quite automatically and you're watching a film and you don't need to, you feel like you're not reading, but you still are. So I think that's also what happens in concerts a lot. And I think it just, for me as a performer, it actually enhances my connection to the audience mostly. There are situations when it's different, but mostly.
Okay, thank you. Ilya,
Yeah.
you have another track up, or both of you do.
We do, and it's funny you should mention playing concerts, because this is actually not a track from, it's not a recording from the album. It is in fact a recording of a live performance, a video that we did 2018 at the Shtetl Neukölln Festival right there in Berlin in December of 2018, and this is a medley of two songs. Are we going to listen to both songs? Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah, let's listen
I
to
think
both songs.
so. I'll try to do the switch as smoothly as I physically can, because it's really a medley, and even though on the album it's represented as two tracks, and it's again exactly what we were talking about here earlier. On the album it's two tracks, but it has a connection, and the connection is dark and death, like, as we say, if you find yourself in a folk song, don't go to the river.
Is viel besser, was is nicht kein Unterschied von kleiner bis zu größer. Ich mach in Wasser, was ist viel besser, was is nicht kein Unterschied von kleiner bis zu größer. je neue Geschichte kann ich auch erzählen. Was hat sich getroffen, du nicht weißt. Ach, wo es not sagt, der tranken Pina Kalle. Der zieht viele Fahne Mann. Ach, wo es not sagt, der tranken Pina Kalle. Der zieht viele Fahne Mann. Wenn man hat ihr mit vielen Tachlerois gemein. Von die fischliche Säcke werden zu wissen, oi wie die Kalle hat ihr gesehen. Die Kleider von sich hat sie zerrissen, oi wie die Kalle hat ihr gesehen. Die Kleider von sich hat sie zerrissen. Oi, tausender Menschen sind spazieren gegangen. Die Sonne zieht aus am Molerhut. Von jener Satachabe steht das schöne Kabel. Sie jüngert, sie weint, sie ruht. Von jener Satachabe steht das schöne Kabel. Sie jüngert, sie weint, sie ruht. Oi Menschen ergiede, oi ihr Menschen getreue. Ihr gedenkt nur, was für Kleider hat getrunken. Zerteilt die Kleider, verloren man soll noch im Kaddisch suchen. Zerteilt die Kleider, verloren man soll noch im Kaddisch suchen.
Beautiful. Very moving.
That got dark.
Yeah.
A little dark.
What are the sources of this medley? Would you like to talk about that a bit?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure. So these are two songs. The Fischlichen Wasser, which is probably a little bit better known than the second song, Eine Geschichte. The Fischlichen Wasser is a song that I first heard from Michael Alpert, and he's learned it, as I know, he's heard it from multiple singers, and one of my favorite Yiddish song sources right now that has been active for 10 years now is the Center for Traditional Music and Dance blog, Yiddish Song of the Week. And both of these songs are presented there. And so Fischlichen Wasser is sung by a beautiful singer, Tsunia Reimer. And Eine Geschichte is actually the very first song on the blog as sung by incredible singer Livshe Schechter-Widman, who was the mother of Bela Schechter-Gottesman and the grandmother of Itze Gottesman and the great-grandmother of Esther Gottesman, and an important matriarch in this beautiful dynasty, Yiddish dynasty. And in many ways, what connects these songs for us is the water, dark water imagery. Even though Fischlichen Wasser doesn't necessarily directly say that anybody drowned, but if you look at different versions of this song, you can see that that there might be verses that start with Fischlichen Wasser, fish in the water, they have it better, and with fish in the water, you have it better. So there's a certain getting closer to it. So, and in the second song, there is a groom that drowns himself away from the bride. So I felt like connecting these two songs as people who, for different reasons, feel like they need to throw themselves in the water, be it out of your own unrequited, unsuccessful love, or for whatever reason this man didn't want to marry a woman from a good family, and so on. I have a theory about that as well. But yeah, I have a theory. I have a theory about everything. If you want to ask me, I have a theory.
I just want to add that if you are thinking about throwing yourself in the water for whatever reasons, don't do it. Just listen to this song instead, and that will be your... Maybe it will make you feel better.
Or if
Well-
you want to throw yourself in the water because it's hot, and you just want to responsibly and carefully throw
Right.
yourself in the water and come out of it, that's also okay.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to add that all of our music is 100% traditional, in case anyone was wondering, but the sources are very important, and we really try to learn from old recordings and singers, old, like, from kind of trying to continue the oral tradition of learning songs from a recording rather than learning it from a book that was written by someone who learned it from a recording, and try to really, like, when we're doing this arrangement, trying to get a little bit into the mind of those people who were singing, and like why they were singing the way they were singing, what are they trying to express, what other meanings there are, and just, also trying to imagine what it would be like if those singers were in our band, or if they were in a situation where they could be in a band. I mean, a lot of these songs are women's songs that were never even performed for an audience. They were mostly performed at home while working, or for family, something. But what would they do if they were on stage? It's another question. Would they sing it the same way? Maybe not. Would they sing the same songs? Maybe not. And we have some recordings of singers performing this on stage, like, for example, Fagel Yudin from the CTMD concerts in the 70s, whenever that happened.
Yeah, 78. Or
Right.
Bronya Sakina in the 80s.
Right. So it's interesting, but obviously they didn't have a heavy rock accompaniment. So all of those questions. Speaking of
Okay.
questions,
Yes, I think we might have some questions from the audience, from people tuned in on either Facebook or YouTube, and I don't really see those
I'm
so
gonna
well.
I'm
so
gonna
if-
bring them up. One second.
Okay.
Let me see. I'm gonna go one by one, and here is a question from Janina Vorps. Hi, Janina.
Hi, Janina.
And Janina says, "Can you say something about the development of these songs arrangements since you started playing them?"
we can. We have said something, and
If you feel like you've answered this question enough, but like, do you feel, this is my question to you, Ilya.
yes,
Do you feel like we kind of came up with a general idea and there was an arrangement and we started, and a lot of these songs, especially on this record, we've played for 6 to 8 years and we've recorded them over this time. Do you feel like there has been a change over this time? And do you want to talk something about that?
I want to talk briefly about this because I think we talked about this, and also because I can talk about this all day, but I don't have to. But I think generally the approach was I write a lot of the arrangements for this, and the way I approach is that just I lock myself in a room and I listen to the same old recording over and over again, or we lock ourselves in a room with Sasha and we just keep playing the song over and over again, and finding and I find generally, not just for this album, that it's often that the very first idea is somehow the best. And, I listen and I play something to it, and then I play a bunch of other things, but then I come back to the first idea and it actually is, feels the best. But a lot of the arrangements come from some sort of jam, or like just improvising and, trying to let go of the chords and scales and just trying different things, and then later it solidifies into an arrangement. And as you saw with Saposkilla, it solidified into one arrangement, and then it just took itself into a different direction. And I honestly don't know how that happened. I mean, it was part intellectual, part unconscious, and part just like the song arranged itself. So yeah, I don't know. I wish I could control that a bit more. I wish I could be like all of those composers, just hear the whole song in their head and then just sit down and write it out. But I'm probably not one of those composers.
Well, that's also fine. I think
Right.
experiential development is just as important. I'm going to just bring up a comment from Hannah Griff-Slavin because I think it's an interesting thought that we talked about a little earlier. She says, look at what Richard Thompson and Fairport Convention did to English folk songs. I'm sorry, I can't see. I'm a little blind. You're continuing the tradition of bringing Yiddish music into the 21st century. Thank you, Hannah. I would say we bring it into the 70s of the, but
Right.
but really appreciate it.
But actually, if I may say, that's an interesting comment, Sasha, because
Yes.
in the same way that the Yiddish music revival started by looking back a couple of generations, your band is, I think, less inspired by what other young bands are doing right now, but maybe I'm wrong about that, and more inspired with what you said, things that are older than you, things that were happening in the 70s and the 80s, really sort of my generation. What is, I mean, and actually, the design is retro. There's definitely a retro side to what this is. It's not retro in the sense of trying to reproduce a sound exactly. Of course not. Nobody would accuse this of being a cover concept or anything like that. But obviously, really attracted to something that was happening a couple generations ago. Could you say something more about that?
I had to describe the music to Don Godwin, the mastering engineer, where he said, what kind of sound do you want to have on the music? And I had to think about it, and the best I could come up with is that this is a 90s band playing covers of 70s music for the purposes of mastering, because it's also the covers are of a 70s band playing music from 1910s or whatever, or 18. So it's I do like the 70s. I think, I mean, I haven't lived there. Maybe I wouldn't like it if I had lived there, but it just seems like musically I think what was happening musically was great there, and on many levels. And I think especially because it was kind of pre-MIDI, but already post it discovered some cool sounds, and people discovered stereo and they were playing around with that, and just generally, like, the music that was coming out of the 70s was a little bit cleaner than the 60s, but not as kind of digital as the 80s, which is some people like 80s. I prefer 70s somehow.
Well, if I may also say something here, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. I'm trying to also bring up the questions, and I had a thought and I lost it. So it was not that important.
But I will say something, if I might, about you as a singer. I think I'm not the only person who has been reminded of people like Janis Joplin and Grace Slick, and I mean it's a singing
I might have
style.
heard that a couple of times.
I'm sure you have, and I mean that's going also back to a time that had to do with, you know, being way out there as a woman in a way that was, you know, that broke a lot of the traditional models, and that was shocking to some people and exciting to everybody. And those, I think those are the people that you know, when you're performing, that many people are reminded of. And they're not 80s singers, right? It's not Blondie.
Well, yeah, and that's definitely a huge inspiration for me. And one of the thinking here is definitely that Yiddish in general, I mean, let's talk about what Yiddish is. Yiddish was referred to as Weiberdeutsch, as the woman's language, and this repertoire is primarily woman's repertoire, and it talks about women's stories very often in a lot of cases, and it talks about stories and experiences from a female perspective, and to me it makes absolute sense to kind of like let it out in this way and let it represent female sensuality and sexuality and emotionality in every possible way. So it just makes sense to me. I think it's just a different expression of something very similar that used maybe if we talk about 19th century, Jewish women didn't quite have a way to jump around and wave their hair, but maybe that's how this was the way for them to express the same level of emotion. So, and in the modern world, I think it's amplified. So we have to go to a different level of, and of course there are all the other developments. Yes, Alan.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I think that there's a very, very interesting spectrum if we go back to those, you know, to the 70s or so, because at the same time, well, it's really late 60s. At the same time, you have Janis Joplin and Grace Slick. You also have Joni Mitchell, who is also an absolutely amazing woman who's breaking all kinds of boundaries and singing about love and singing about sex and singing about relationships and singing about the body, and incredibly creative. But no one would ever confuse her with Grace Slick or Janis Joplin in the way that she sang or her performance style, right? Which is not saying one is better or the other is worse, but there's just two very, very different sensibilities. And I think, you know, if I were thinking about,
Go ahead. No, what I'm gonna say is that if, like, when we get to the next song, I think you'll also hear some of that sensibility in it. I think that's also an important inspiration. But talking about like inspiration from different times, I think it's also about where we are in our generation of what it means to be playing Yiddish music and being in klezmer revival or whatever, or revitalization, or I don't think, you know, I think where we are, we first heard bands that were already being revival bands. The first bands we heard were Brave Old World and Klezmatics and, you know, all the modern bands. And then we wound up finding that there's actually all the older stuff that we can learn from. So for us, we were first hearing not our peers, we were hearing our mentors, and then we got to hear what our mentors learned from, you know. So,
right.
And I think that's an important point.
Can I say one more thing before we transition to the next song? It's important to me because we've been talking about basically white rock and roll singers in that tradition. But of course, many of those singers were inspired by African American singers, people like Aretha and people like Billie Holiday and people who were just knocking the socks off of everybody and inspired, you know, basically an entire white generation to try to go someplace that white American culture had never gone before. And I just felt that it's important to mention that in this context, because without that African American heritage, I think none of this would have happened at all.
For sure, yes.
Yeah. Ilya?
Yes, I mean, for sure, Led Zeppelin covered.
Oh, did we lose you?
You froze.
I think we lost Ilya.
No, he's
No,
back.
I'm here.
You're back.
I'm here.
You froze for a second.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything, and just to throw one more thing at this, which something that I've also been thinking about. You said, about Yiddish women would not really be able to do what you're doing today, in the
In
100 years
19th
ago.
century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, and I don't want to discuss this here, but something to think about is that the majority of Yiddish-speaking women today would not be able to do what you're doing.
That's
And this
also
is,
a question, definitely.
This is something, I mean, it's a broader question generally about, what is our Yiddish, what is the Yiddish scene today?
Well, actually,
And,
I'll bring up
which
Ilya Lensky here.
it's not just the Yiddish revival, and how does that fit in the broader?
And and this is what our friend from Latvia, Ilya Lensky, was asking, related to it from the opposite side of it,
Right.
guys. To what extent you try to get into regular rock scene, well, not emphasizing your
Sectorality.
sectorality. Very nice. Good word, Ilya. But rather
He's smart.
bringing Yiddish into mainstream. He's smart. He's the director of the Museum Jews in Latvia. If you're ever in Riga, check him out and check the museum out. Little plug.
We have an exhibition there, by the way, Sasha and I. We
Yeah, we
recorded
do.
some folk songs that you can only
yeah.
hear.
So I think Ilya's connection is a little bit failing right now. So I'll say we haven't, Ilya. We haven't really.
What?
Maybe when Shneyveys comes back, he'll tell you something else. But I don't think we have tried to go into rock scene. Somehow, we just haven't. We tried. We've connected to world music scenes rather than rock scenes. I think that would be the.
I think
Short
this project is definitely somewhere in between different niches, and it is. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. It is a bit too rock for most of the Yiddish world, and it's a bit too folk or too Yiddish for the rock world, and also the rock world is has its own issues, which is the rock world today is not the same as it was in the 70s. Like there is the concept of a rock star is very like a rock star now is somebody who drives a car with a lot of amps, and it's like you're not. I mean, for one thing, you're not making. Most rock musicians don't make a lot of money. They actually probably make less money than klezmer musicians these days.
Don't tell. It's
I
a
mean,
secret.
well, these days
all the crazy money that we're making, especially these days.
Nobody's making. Yeah, exactly. But if I may add something about money, which is that this recording of this album is this is mostly a self-funded album, or for a big part. Like there is no sponsor and there is no label and there is no. But there was a sponsor that I would like to mention now, which is Asylum Arts. It's a organization that is supporting mostly Jewish artists in their artistic endeavors, and actually they've been doing a lot of important work during this time. Like they had special grants for quarantine artists to make a little bit more money, and But this was part of their grant program that I applied for a few years ago, and actually this is something that helped us finish the album, because otherwise it might have been sitting on my hard drive for
another 5 years at least.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would like to thank Asylum Arts for this, and I would like to thank everyone who supported who bought the album so far, because this money will go possibly into producing more albums, or possibly into producing a physical copy of the album, which some people are asking about. Also, if you know a label who wants to release this, then let us know in the comments, or rather in a personal direct message.
So I would suggest that we hear one more track from the album.
Oh yes.
And then maybe we wrap it up, because we're getting close to the 2-hour chunk of time that we had allocated for this. Yeah? What would you like to play for us?
Sasha.
Oh, okay, Sasha. All right. So I think we're gonna premiere our brand new music video that Ilya and I created because we've been experiencing being at all these different festivals this summer in different ways. We're very grateful, first of all, to Yiddish Summer to present us, even if we couldn't do it in person. It's really a pity that we didn't manage to. Not our fault. But we're very happy that Yiddish Summer Weimar got to present us online. And Yiddish Summer happened this year in person with an incredible, thoughtful way of socially distancing, and everything was outside. And I'm sure if you want to ask Alan about all the incredible hoops that they had to jump through in order to make it happen, and at the same time all the dedication from the team and the participants and the audiences to comply with everything that needed to be done to make it safe and in person, it was quite incredible. But I know that Ilya and I have been coming to Yiddish Summer for 15 years uninterrupted, and this is the first time in all these years that Ilya couldn't make it, because Ilya lives in New York, and travel. So, and then after that, last week, another festival that we love and admire happened fully online. Class Canada happened absolutely fully online with all the concerts and all the classes, which was another weird and new and different experience. So
for everyone, yeah.
For everyone. So we felt like this one song that is on this album deserves to get a special video, new video that we recorded especially for these events. And it's me on vocals and Ilya on everything else. You
not
will
the accordions.
No
accordions in this band.
No accordions in this band. Accordions are the space for accordions is reserved in the background of the picture, not the sound. Right. And yes, so this is a song about distance and being away from each other and being split by water, like we are now with Ilya, like Yiddish Summer Weimar and Class Canada are across the ocean from each other. And this is a song about spending all this time and remembering all the time together and waiting to reconnect. Of course, in this song, originally it's about lovers that are split for one or another reason. And these days it really feels like
it's about all of us.
It's about all of us being split and far away, and not being able to be together and just remembering the wonderful nights. That's also what we feel about Yiddish Summer now that it's gone, what we feel about Close Canada now that it's gone, and what we feel about all the time that we actually got to sit together and do things together. And in a way, this is how we're looking forward to doing that all together again.
Okay, let's listen to this and come back and say goodbye after that.
Yes.
Okay,
Great.
here you go.
Oi dorten, über Wasser, dorten, über a Brick, die bist da weg, über weite Jammer, und bänk ich stark noch dir zurück. Oi, wie verloren, zusammengesessen, wie verloren, spät bei Nacht, und wie viel Tränen haben wir beide vergossen. Hey, wir haben die Liebe zusammengebracht. Oi, du Gottenju, du lieber Gottenju, helf mir Gott, es ist mir sicher nicht geht. Schon 2, 3 Jahre lang, als wir spielen a Liebe. Und Hasne haben beide kennen wir nicht. Deine Eigelach, wie die schwarze Karschalach, und deine Lieblach, wie rosa wie Papier, und deine Fingerlach, wie Tint und Feder. Heu schreiben Brieflach, so wollst du zu mir. Oi, deine Brieflach, will ich legen, und will kuschen jeder Neues, und mir zieht die Gedrärlach, will ich selber gießen. Oi, bis wird werden voll der Kohl.
I love the merging of the two people at the end, as well as the whole atmosphere of the piece. Very, very beautiful. Well, I want to thank both of you for offering to allow Yiddish Summer Weimar to present the album in this way. I had a really great time doing this with you. And I'm feeling, very caught up in the music and everything that you've done with it, and in a very, very good way. So for sure, I'm going to go buy the album now and spend a lot of time listening to it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us, Alan, and for being with us. And, Yiddish Summer for me is very important, and for both of us. I think all the traditional music that we learned there and everything we learned there helps us.
And all the non-traditional
exactly,
music.
Yes. But it helps us, create new music. And this is something I think that everyone can benefit from if you go to Yiddish Summer Weimar next year.
Thank you. Well, we'll hope that we're on top of the Corona situation in order to be a little bit more normal next year. But actually, this year's Yiddish Summer Weimar was an amazing experience, because instead of celebrating our 20th anniversary in a big, huge, gala kind of way, we were forced to come back down to our core values and our core relationships. And it was very, very moving experience to find that we were able to do that. And I know that the audience has appreciated it. And all of that lives from the artists who were there. And Ilya, you were very, very sorely missed there this summer. I can't think of a day that somebody didn't say to me, "Where's Ilya?" It all feels different when Ilya isn't here. So
I was I was here editing this video.
No, okay, good.
That's
we felt
time.
that. All right. So next year in Weimar and everywhere else in the world where Yiddish land lives. And
Yes.
thank you to both of you for for your creativity, and also your amazing work also as teachers, not only as artists, but also passing down what you do as creative artists to other people, both older generations and younger generations, who I know admire your work very, very much, as I do too.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching on YouTube and Facebook.
Thank you for sticking around with us. We really appreciate it.
Sorry we didn't answer all the questions, but maybe we'll do this again. Why not?
Okay.
Hopefully,
All right.
hopefully we'll have a real in-person concert or tour next year sometime. Stay
All
in
right.
touch and
Okay.
check out the album.
Love
All
you,
right.
everybody. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Have a good day or
Bye.
evening. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.